Lesson number 27. Preface. We have now reached a stage where the new idea given in Lesson 11 can be enlarged upon to vastly aid you in removing all limitations from your life by making you know how you can build it to any height of power you desire without being handicapped by the lack of knowledge from which doubt, fears, pessimism, and other negative effects retard your growth. Please restudy Lesson number 11 from page 180 and build this lesson upon it. All science textbooks contain a universally accepted law which is printed on page 183 of Lesson 11, which is as follows. Action and reaction are equal and opposite. At the same time, that idea is simplified by explaining that action and reaction are simultaneously in their expression. It states that they are then repeated sequentially. On page 180, there is a quotation from the divine Iliad, which is God's assurance that whatever you desire will not only be granted to you, but is already yours, and always has been, but you have not yet known it. That is the trouble with us. We do not know our own power. Proof of this lies in the fact that we have used not more than 2% of our power at this early stage of man's unfolding. Bearing in mind the statement on pages 180, 181, 182, and 183, and assuming that you now fully comprehend them, we shall now modify the above law by clothing it in other words as follows. Every action is its own reaction. This means that when you perform any action, you have already created its equal and opposite reaction. Actions are necessary to give physical bodies to mind desire. The desire must precede the action, but the thought body of a mind desire can never have a physical body without being followed by physical action. If your action is in balance with your desire, the reaction will also be. Likewise, if your desire is of majestic measure, and your action is in the measure of your desire, you will produce a material body of majestic measures. You cannot help doing so, for the reaction of your action is as certain to be the image of your majestic desire as that day follows night. If you have allowed this idea to sink into your soul until you know it, not just believe it, you will now be ready to comprehend another modification of this wonderful promise of your father and mother now following. Every desire of mind is already fulfilled. When you actually know this, you are equipped for any achievement whatsoever which is within universal law. Knowing this within your soul strips you of any limitations whatsoever. When you desire to accomplish anything, you will start doing it at once with knowledge that you can complete it, for you will learn how to do it in the doing of it. The lesson that you should learn from this, coupled with lesson number 11, is that your desires and your actions should be positive. They must express the life principle. The slightest negative note in your desire lessens it and negates it. If your knowledge is strong, your desire can be without measure. If your desire is to remove mountains, the mountains will be moved. But the slightest doubt or fear, or the picturing of insurmountable hurdles, or pessimism arising from past failures, or hesitating because of lack of money, or any other specifics or doubt whatsoever, means that the negation of your desire lessens the measure of your positive desire, which is based upon knowing. As God's law is absolute, you cannot possibly evade distorting the pattern of your desire by doubting the certainty of its fulfillment. When you have arrived at this stage of your knowing, you will have no desire which is for self alone. That would be impossible. When you have become fully aware of your cosmic self, your very nature will be cosmic. Your desire will be for the whole, like unto our Father and Mother's desires. And as our Creator's creations are like unto his balanced desires, for the whole and never for a part, so will your creations be balanced like unto his. The more you fully comprehend the infinitely multiplied power you are bestowing upon yourself by losing your personal ego in your newly found universality, the more you can discard past ages of body sensing and glory in the ecstasy of your knowing. The great mystics of all time have tried to give you the secret of their power in such words as, "He that findeth his life shall lose it, and he that loses his life for my sake shall find it," but their meanings have not been understood. Not until the coming of cosmic man could these teachings of cosmic, conscious messengers be even faintly understood. These things I know, and I know also that you cannot rise to the great heights of your own omnipotence until you know the true relationship which exists between the light which mind is and the two lights which bodies are. Bear with me, therefore, for your own sake, when I tell you in great detail about such seemingly unimportant things as the vibration of a harp string. As every effect of motion in the universe has the same basic foundation in the divine Trinity as every other effort, it is important that you understand the principle which lies behind the simple vibrations of a harp string, which lives and dies many hundreds of times in 1 second. as that you know about the same principle in a nebula, which has but one life in hundreds of billions of years. We compare a sound vibration with life and death, to point out the sameness of principle which lies back of every effect of motion, and of the law which governs the making of material bodies from conceived thought bodies, and of the principle of desire which is already fulfilled at the moment of concentration upon desire, and the sequential fulfillment by the action of giving your desires a material body. We will continue to amplify the above by still continuing to use the example of the desire to give a material body to the musical tone of a silent harp string. Let us therefore build the body of an idea of a musical tone step by step, and as we build it, let us fix within our consciousness the fact that we build all other bodies in exactly the same manner. That manner is God's way of doing it, and there is no other way, no variation of the process whatsoever, whether it be a solar system built by God, or a top which a boy builds for spinning, or an industry built by man. 1. First comes desire of mind. Desire is timeless. Desire of mind to create comes like a flash of inspired light from knowing mind. Desire to create always means a desire to give out from the centering soul. Desire to create is spiritual, and a spiritual creation always gives out from a centering point of omniscient, omnipotent light. Do not confuse the spiritual desire to create bodies with the physical desire to take something to continue the growth of a creating body. Desires of the senses for the survival of sensed bodies is the process of lawfully receiving that which is re-given, or of unlawfully taking it for self alone. 2. Desire of mind to conceive an idea of mind is immediately fulfilled, for every separate idea is a part of God's one whole idea. Therefore you know that your desire is already fulfilled as a mental conception, because the whole idea, of which your idea is a part, is already existent in the undivided universe of mind. 3. You now divide the idea by setting your concept in motion. To set it in motion is to think it. To think it is to separate what you want from the whole. You do not desire the whole. You want only a part of the whole. All you want and have asked for is to produce a musical note from the stillness of the whole universe by building a body of sound for senses to hear with outer ears and souls to hear with inner ears. 4. The moment you extend what you know to your electric servant, which thinks what you know into thought forms, you begin the work of building a body for your desire. Remember always that God works with you and not for you. You are a unit of His creation. Your soul is God's soul. Your hands are God's hands. To the extent of your awareness of this fact, you are either manifesting God by being universal man and universal soul, or just manifesting your own sensed body. Whichever you are shows in your work. The thought-imagined bodies you create in your imaginings have in them your immortality or your mortality. 5. Your concept now has a pattern, a thought pattern, which is a thought body. It is like the formless seed of a rose from which the full-blown flower unfolds. You must now give your idea a material body, and that can be done only through action. Again we say your desires has already been fulfilled, for that which you have desired already stands before you. God has created it for you by creating His own body. It is already existent, awaiting you. But you must reach forth and receive that which He has given you to fulfill your desires, for thy desire shall not walk thy way to thee unaided by the strong arm, is stated in the message. 6. Now comes a necessity for bodily action. You reach forth for the material to make your harp string. From now on, the more you will keep before you a realization that each action is its own reaction, the easier becomes your task of building a body for your musical tone, or for the moving of a mountain. A light projected into a mirror is re-given from the mirror, and all matter is a mirror reflecting its units into each other. The recoil of a gun is the simultaneous reaction to its explosive action. A powerful discharge has a powerful recoil. Powerful thoughts of men likewise bring powerful reactions. Every reflection or reaction is in reverse of its action, for it is by the simultaneous action-reaction of desire that the universal equilibrium is divided. Just as you cannot polarize one end of a magnet without polarizing the other end simultaneously, you cannot perform any action which divides the undivided without creating both the action and its reaction simultaneously. To walk, you must divide your balance. You lose it to find it for again losing it, but that which you have lost is always awaiting you. For you created both action and reaction simultaneously. That which you have lost is already thine. All down the ages it has been thine without thy knowing it, even though thou hast but just asked for it. You may walk to the ends of the earth with God. Without him you can do nothing. He will not do it for you without you. That is what I mean by working knowingly with God. He has prepared the way for you. He has made the path for you up your own mountain, but you must work with him for the fulfillment of your desire to reach your mountain top. The first step motivates you for the next step by reborning desire in you for the next step. And so it is you put the material together, action by action given, and reaction by reaction re-given, until you have created a body for your harp and a string for the tone you desire. There it is. You can now see it and feel it, but all down the eons it has always been there, awaiting your desired, followed by your action to bring it into seeming being. Do you realize this fact? If you do, you can know that anything else which you wish to bring into seeming being by giving it a transient body is within your limitless power. There is your harp with one string on it of the tone you desire. One string is one step toward completing all of the octaves of strings. There it is, completed but silent. 7. Now you are ready to fulfill the last step of your desire, that of building a body of sound from your harp. Again we repeat the fact that desire is already fulfilled, for you know the sounds and rhythmic tones that are within the silence of those strings. You not only know them, but can imagine them as thought bodies which you can hear in your imagining with inner ears. In other words, you know that the sounds are there, in the silence of the undivided, awaiting your action to born their bodies to life. Until you act to give your idea a material body, it will still be existent as undivided idea, but will not be expressed in a divided universe of moving bodies. You have no limitations until you set them. Much meditation on the above thought will lead you to a great conclusion. The fact that God will immediately grant your desires seems unbelievable, and it is unbelievable to those who misunderstand his way of working with you. If you interpret it to mean that whatever you desire will come to you full-grown and without effort on your part, then you do not understand how it is that God works with you and not for you. If you do understand his manner of working with you step by step, then you must take the first step with him in order to be given the power to take the next step. He whose desires has built a body for one harp string can become master harpist if his desires are of that measure, and then become leader of a symphony or master composer if his desire and his knowing are sufficiently intense. If you have any limitations whatsoever, you have yourselves set them for yourself. The universe is infinitely extended, and you are the universe. The universal balance wheel. When you look up into the heavens with a high-power telescope, you will see many nebulas which are like, or approximately like, the perfectly balanced spiral nebula which you see edgewise in Figure 58. A three-quarter view of another perfectly balanced nebula of the same type is the one in Figure 57. If you could see either of these from a direct side view, it would resemble Figure 59. The amazing idea which I wish to convey to you is that the little swirling sound bodies which you see indicated on the amplitudes of energy, vibrating waves in Figures 53, 54, 55, and 56, are identical in every respect, except duration and volume, with these giant nebulas of the heavens. Our Milky Way is one of these giant nebulas. Our solar system is as a speck of dust in it. Hundreds of millions of stars constitute our Milky Way nebula, all of such vast distances from each other that the farther ones resemble milky clouds. Even from where you stand upon this little earth and look out into our nebula, you see such brilliant stars as Sirius, Vega, Capella, Arcturus, and hundreds like them, all separate from each other because we are close to them, a few thousand millions of miles or so, and that is quite a neighborly closeness in a nebula. The distant ones are so far off that light, traveling at 186,400 miles per second, takes millions of years to reach our planet. It seems incredible that the little spiral pinwheels which balance and complete every sound vibration is the same in principle and construction as those of solar and nebular wave vibrations, but that is the amazing fact of nature. Nature has but one system of mechanics for dividing the undivided and conditioning the unconditioned, and they are the same in microcosmic waves or macrocosmic ones. All matter is wound up tight by concentrative thinking and unwound by decentrative thinking. The journey from rest to rest and back again is always a spiral one. Centripetal force pulls inward from within to create centers of gravity, and centrifugal force thrusts outward from within to dissipate and void the pull of gravity. The same forces which create the stars of the heavens create the cells of your body. For this reason, what I shall tell you in the following lesson, for which I am now laying a foundation, is of vast import in knowing how to create a perfect body for yourself, a perfect business or perfect social relationship, as well as to create masterpieces of perfection in whatever you give out from yourself to the world. The more you comprehend the principle of balance in nature, the more you can control it in vitalizing your own body and the products of your mind. Conclusion. The reason we have stressed this one balanced form of the spiral nebula in the wave in the heavens and in the harp string is because the position in the wave is one of perfect polarity and perfect spherical form for all the planets of its atomic, solar, or stellar system. The equator for every sphere in every system is the same, and every pole of rotation in every sun and planet coincides with its magnetic pole. This whirling spiral form is the maximum of perfection in all creating systems of matter. It is the ideal sought for, but seldom reached anywhere, either by the heavens or by man. The heavens are as full of unbalanced pairs of opposite systems and conditions as are found within human relationships and experience. The whole principle of it is fascinating. The science of chemistry is based upon the combining of balanced and unbalanced conditions. The chemical elements are composed of three unbalanced pairs, which are separated from each other, seeking sex union with each other, and one balanced pair which have already found that union. You will find that those have already found sex union at the amplitude of their octave waves, and each one of them will be almost as perfectly balanced as the nebula shown in figures 58 and 59, almost, but not quite. There are 9 octaves of the elements, and only one of these is a fully balanced pair. That one is the element known as carbon, and it is located on the amplitude of the whole 9-octave cycle. To know why a sun or solar system is dying is to know why you are dying. If I drew a diagram of the solar system, you would see how far out of balance it is as a whole. If you are as much out of balance as this planet, you would feel devitalized or ill. Its magnetic poles are 23 degrees from the polar axis of rotation. If you let the cells of your body depolarize to that extent, you would need a balance pole or cane to walk with. Likewise, if you allow your business to become so unbalanced, you would make very little profit and probably face deficits. And so it is that we must still continue to build bodies as God builds them, and build them with God to manifest Him. To do this, we must know in our hearts. We must know in our souls. You cannot produce enduring things by following memorized formulas. You must meditate upon them in your spare moments, in your walks, while waiting for a train, or alone in your chamber. The more you thus meditate, the more your mind will know, and as a consequence, the more powerfully you will think. There is really very little to know, but it has such vast extension that it is difficult to keep from being confused. Gradually, however, the principle of the Divine Trinity will become so much a part of you that one cloud of confusion after another will pass away until you can view the whole cosmos as one whole. When that day comes, all things shall be added unto you, and you shall know the glory of it. End of lesson. Lesson number 28. Questions concerning faith, belief, and faith healing. So many questions have come to us from various sources which are so unlike the working of natural law and God's way of working that they might appropriately belong to the Middle Ages. People who are rational and wise about many things of life seem to lose all their rationality and reason when it comes to matters of interpreting God's ways. Many of these questions concern faith and belief, faith healing, intercessory prayer, and their belief in them is like unbelief in miracles which never happened nor could happen. Many of these questioners sincerely believe that if many sincere and devout people pray long enough and with sufficient intensity, they can induce God to do something for them which He otherwise would not do, even to reverse His laws of special favors and special recognition of their devotion. Many of them border so closely to superstition that it is useless to answer them, for those who ask are not ready for the truth. These prefer the so-called miraculous and find greater interest in the claims that people can walk on hot coals through faith and belief than in the real law of nature, by means of which they can change their own depolarizing body by a joyous polarizing thought, proving that the truth is always more wonderful than the most picturesque untruth, even though not so spectacular. It is very gratifying that our close students are practically free from this character of questions, for they are more ready for enlightenment. But even those who are closest to the light ask for scientific explanation so they can better answer those who question them. We look to you who are ready for cosmic knowledge to become the seed for spreading the light of cosmic awareness to all mankind. Therefore I say to you that you must have comprehension and knowledge to manifest God, for faith and beliefs are blind. They are dwellers in the dark and will cause your feet to stumble, and bind you to a slavery of dependence upon a basic nothingness, where you need a rock of granite for your feet. You would not expect to write a story, compose a symphony, or solve a problem in mathematics upon faith and belief unsupported by knowledge, yet countless prayers go up to God with the hope that faith and belief, without intelligent action based upon knowledge, will bring fulfillment or desire. You do not have faith and belief that you can walk. You know that you can walk. You also know that you can do anything by acquiring the knowledge of how to do it through action, yet many there who have faith and belief that God will do it for them. God will not do it for them. He will only do it with them. The great misconception of prayer. Practically every prayer which carries with it a request also carries with it the inference that God is overlooking something in the management of his universe and needs a reminder that things are not running smoothly enough to suit the petitioner. Also, they carry the inference that requests are asked as personal favors for reverence and devout believers, that such favors will be granted if enough devout and reverent people join the weight of their petitions, together to be heard by God, and his interest in their personal request is sufficiently aroused. Such prayers carrying an inference of intercession in someone's interest, as though intercession is necessary with God, or would have any effect whatsoever upon him. To those I would say that God does his part always and needs no reminder. His part of creation is perfect. His law is perfect. His law always works. You do not have to ask God to make his law of gravitation work, neither will he set it aside if you ask him. If you fall over a cliff, the law of gravitation will cause your death, whether you are a saint or a sinner, and no prayer will set that aside. God will tell you not to fall. He has told you that in the very seed, but if you disobey, you will perish. God's whole universe is in perfect balance. He keeps it so. You may depend upon it always. If you want good crops, God's law is there to give them to you if you work with his law. But if you ask God to do your part of the work as well as his, you will harvest nothing, no matter how great is your faith. Many humans would not ask God to cure a potato blight. They would not think it quite reasonable that the farmer does something to cure it himself. When, however, a blight strikes their own bodies, they vigorously condemn anyone who suggests that they do what the farmer does who works knowingly with God, doing his part of the work together with God's part. What was the cause of the potato blight? Too much rain and damp. What was the cause of the human body blight? Tight lacings generations ago, wrong diet, unbalanced emotional disturbance, frustrations, infections from rusty nail, distorted seed pattern of ancestors' unbalanced actions. No matter what the cause of any disintegrating or depolarizing effects, the remedy for it is to restore balance. The restoration of balance in any machine can be accomplished through action. The restoration of balance through any mental unbalanced condition is purely mental. A change of thought from negative to positive will cure any mental ailment. A physically unbalanced condition, which is a reaction of the mental unbalance, will also become balanced. Such a mind healing has no relation whatever to faith and belief. It is purely cause and effect, working in accordance with God's established laws. Purely physical abnormalities, whether a broken bone, a cancer, a cut upon the head, a gunshot wound, paralysis from blood clots on the brain, misshapen bodies, or other deformities, can be cured only by physical action. One might just as well ask God, in all faith and belief, to mend a broken spoke in an automobile wheel as to ask him to cure a deformed foot without intelligent action. Cause and effect. Creation is a play of cause and effect. The cause is undivided. Cause is always balanced. It is always one. Effect is divided. Instead of one balanced condition, it is a division into two unbalanced conditions. The play of life is to keep the two unbalanced conditions of effect in balance with each other. When cause and effect are in balance with each other, the spiritual and physical manifestations of either man or nature manifest harmony, unity, growth, and normalcy in all parts. When such an almost impossible rarity occurs with man, one might well say, God made man's body perfect as well as man. Until mankind unfolds to such a higher cosmic goal, however, we must use every means within the power of our increasing knowledge to remedy unbalanced conditions in imperfect bodies. God's law of cause and effect always works. When anything goes wrong with you or with civilization, it is you who are at fault, not God. If men steal from each other and kill each other for ages, they harvest hate and fear, which accumulates in wars. The seed of fear, hate, and greed will not yield harvest of love, prosperity, happiness, and peace. Men pray to ask God to stop the wars, instead of praying to ask God to so enlighten them that men can practice the love principle in their human relations, and therefore reap a like harvest. So long as man continues to violate God's laws, he will hurt himself. All the faith and belief in the world will not alter the effect of any cause whatsoever. Try it. Try putting your finger on a red-hot stove while praying reverently with full faith and belief that God will cancel the law as a favor to you, and see what happens. Your finger will burn. Therefore, I again say to you that when you ask God for anything, never ask him to fulfill his part, for he has already done that. But ask him rather to show you what you should do to so harmoniously work with him that your desire will be fulfilled. Everything which is wrong with you is of your own making, therefore ask that you be enlightened. If, for example, you want a roof for your church and your people pray in full faith and believe that God will give it to you, and then you rely solely upon your prayer, your church will not get its roof. If, however, you ask God to give you knowledge to guide your actions in giving services for re-giving of money for the roof, you will as surely have your desire fulfilled, as the farmer's desire is fulfilled when he does his part by tilling the soil and planting the seed. That is what I mean by the prayer of men who tell God what they wish him to do instead of asking God to tell them what they should do. This is the great misconception of the power of prayer. The cause of that misconception lies in the fact that people who ask God for fulfillment of their desires forget that requests for material things are created only through two-way action. Material things are not created by rubbing an Aladdin lamp or through wishful thinking. They are created through balanced action and reaction. When a mechanic fixes your broken car through knowledge of its working, or a surgeon fixes your broken body through knowledge of its working, those operations are as much mind healing as the elimination of toxic poisons from your body by thoughts of love is a mind healing. All creations are mind creations. All mind creations have bodies formed in the image of mind thoughts. All bodies are created by action and destroyed by opposing action. What man forgets when he prays. When man fervently asks God to fulfill desires, he forgets that he is asking God to do what he himself should do. God's part has already been done. Man asks God to stop wars, forgetting that wars are man-made, not God-made. Wars are effects of the disunity, greed, and selfishness of man. Man has free will to manifest the Spirit in him or his senses as he wills. It is all a part of the play of cause and effect. The play must go on until man learns by experience that he must one day manifest the love principle upon which the universe is founded. Faith will not do your work. You know that the fulfillment of any desire whatsoever comes only through intelligent action. You guide your car through busy streets by intelligent action, not by faith or belief unsupported by knowledge of the right actions which are necessary to take. Faith and belief are wonderfully consoling for a wishful thinker who is willing to believe in miraculous happenings, or who is ready to evade effort on his part, but it should be erased from the lexicon of those who desire to achieve or to acquire anything. God creates what he knows by thinking it into divided forms. Man should do likewise, but he must first know that which he desires to think into form. You may have faith, belief, and also hope in regard to others, but not in God. You must know that God will give you your desire. Others may have to justify your faith and belief in them, but God should not have to prove himself to you. If you ask a builder to build a house for you, you know that he can do it, and also he knows that he can do it. If he answered your inquiry as to whether he could build a house for you by saying, "I hope I can," or "I have faith and belief that I can," your own faith in him would be tinged with deep doubts, for your very belief in him is founded on confidence in his knowledge. You must have confidence in yourself based upon your knowledge, for knowledge is your power, not faith or belief. Therefore, I say to you, whenever you desire to do anything for which you did not feel yourself equipped, Do not start doing it with doubt in your mind, or with blind faith that God will do it for you must not start that way. Stop rather and talk with God. See Him, know Him, be Him in deep meditation. Seek knowledge through inspiration. That is the only way to build omnipotence into your desire. That is the only way to start with strength to fulfill your desire. Never start anything without inspired knowledge which puts love into your giving, for that which is called work should only be joyous giving. Your weakness lies in asking God to fulfill your desire instead of asking Him to give you the knowledge to work with Him in the fulfilling of a universal desire. You render yourself weak in so asking, and you double your weakness by the very thought of having faith in God. Having faith in God implies a doubt of the certainty of His presence, and places God on His honor to grant you your request. This is not the right attitude. You should approach any achievement with an attitude of certainty. You should never approach God or yourself in an attitude of supplication. You are not asking benevolence, nor is God dealing out patronage. God is creator, and you are co-creator, not a supplicant for favors. You must lose your idea of separateness and find your universality. Until you know your oneness with the universe, you are but one part of it. As long as you feel yourself to be a separate individual person, you will think of God as separate and apart from yourself. Until you can think of yourself as the person or the universal self, God will be another being whom you may revere or worship or ask favors from or depend upon in the measure of your knowledge of God. To have faith or belief in God implies separateness. It implies that God is another, of whom you cannot say, I and my Father are one. That is why much deep meditation or communion with God is the most important thing in your life, for the more you lose yourself in the universal self, the more you think of God and yourself being one. When you plant corn, you do it with knowledge born of experience that the corn will grow and fill your granaries. It does not grow because you have faith and belief that it will grow. It grows because of the working of God's law. Likewise, you put the seed in the ground by intelligent action. You do not sit in the house and pray to God with faith and belief that He will plant it for you know that He will not. God will work with you, but not for you. And all of the faith and belief in the world will not give you a crop without your doing your part with God in the fulfillment of your desire. Corn grows, forests rise in their majesty, vapors rise and storms rend without faith and belief, or even without knowledge. God's law is being fulfilled in them. God's law is also being fulfilled in you. You may break your leg, and God's law will heal it, just as God's law grows the corn. But if you ask God to do more for you than fulfill His law, in other words, if you ask Him to do something for you, which is your part of it, He will not do it, no matter how much you pray, and no matter how much faith and belief you put into your prayer. To exemplify my meaning, suppose your broken leg is badly twisted out of line, or the bones pass each other, and you have to ask God to reset the bones, which you yourself should do or have done by a surgeon who knows. You will find that God will do His part by making His universal law work for you. But your twisted leg will be the evidence of your own neglect to do your part of your work that God is doing with you, and you will be a cripple for life. A self-made cripple, self-destined to suffer from your own disobedience to God's law. And therein lies most of the confusion regarding faith healing. God's laws of growth are absolute. They work automatically, and they work whether you pray or do not pray. Conversely, God's law of decay and disintegration are just as absolute as His laws of construction, and all the prayers which ask God to set aside His laws as a special favor to you are more than wasted. Let me exemplify. Potato blight develops in a farmer's field. The farmer does not go to his chamber to pray with full faith and belief that God will cure the potato blight while he sits by his fireside, and does not do his part in working with God to reverse the destructive blight. Nor does he reason with God by making such useless affirmations as, God made the potato perfect, therefore there is no imperfection in God. The farmer knows that he must do his part in checking the destructive growth with God's help with a certain knowledge that God's unalterable laws will always work. So he corrects the faulty, damp, or undernourished soil which was the cause of the blight, and God's constructive laws heal the scars and restores normalcy. If you would not expect a farmer to heal his potato blight by faith and prayer to God, why expect it of a human? Yet a blight develops in humans such as cancer, tumor, or wasted lung, or any of the many things which can happen in any material growing body which came out of the ground through the constructive forces of nature and must return to the ground through the destructive forces which are always waiting to do their part in nature's work the instant they are called upon to do their part. Many humans would not ask God to cure a potato blight, nor condemn a farmer for curing it himself. But when they find that a blight has struck their own body, they pray that God will set aside his inexorable laws because of their great faith in him, instead of doing what the farmer does by working with God. Those who believe this way make certain affirmations upon which they base their beliefs regarding humans as being quite different from laws governing potatoes. These believers say with much reverence, God made man perfect, therefore there can be no imperfection. If you will but see yourself perfect, you will then be perfect. The great fallacy of such a belief lies in the fact that man's body is not man. Man is mind, an idea with a spiritual entity. This is what God made perfect, and it is quite true that there can be no imperfection in the spiritual, eternal man. But it is not the perfect spiritual man that has a cancer or tumor. It is man's body which has the cancer or tumor, and it is man's body which is following the inexorable laws of cause and effect, which constructs and destroys all bodies sequentially. Perfection of God's laws. God made his law perfect also. Perfection of God's law means perfection of balance between two opposite forces, the force which builds bodies and the force which destroys them. God made both these forces, and they are inexorable and unalterable in their working. God made the divided universe, and the laws which govern it are perfect. But God gave man knowledge of how to control these forces by putting his knowledge into action. The forces of nature and the construction of bodies cannot be controlled by wishful thinking. The divided universe of bodies which come from the earth and go back into the earth is one of action, not inaction and wishful thinking. I cut my finger one day when my hands were soiled. I knew very well that the disintegrative forces would have an excellent opportunity to manifest God's law by infecting my finger if I gave those waiting microbes a chance to return my body to the earth. Destructive microbes are manifesting God's laws as purposely as sunshine and growth are fulfilling it. I stepped into the bathroom where my host was washing his face and asked for iodine and hot water, whereupon he said to me, "I am amazed that a man with your knowledge would ask for iodine." "What would you have me do?" I asked. His reply was, "Why not let God do it?" "Then why do you not let God wash your face?" I asked. "Well, that's different. I must do this for cleanliness." "But you are using medicine," he countered. "So are you. Soap is as much a medicine as iodine is. You keep clean in order to keep your body from decaying as it would if you did not keep it clean. I am doing the same thing with a strong microbe killer than soap is because my finger is bleeding. That's the only difference, but the principle is the same. We went to the dinner. I asked of my host, "Why do you eat food if God made you perfect? And why is Janie going to the dentist today to have her teeth filled? And why did you go to the occultist to have glosses made for your body if God made you perfect?" The answer is that God did not make bodies, but God is continually making bodies and is continually destroying them. With your help and the help of all nature, your body is being made. It is not finished, and that is why you are eating food now. You are helping make your body, and if you put good food into it, you will help make a good body in accordance with a perfect law which will work for you. Conversely, if you put bad food into it, yourself will poison your body. You will find that God's perfect law will work against you. If God made you perfect and you destroy that perfection, then you pray to God to fulfill his promise to you to make you perfect. You are not fulfilling that part of the law which is yours to do. You, as eternal man, belong to the undivided universe of undivided balance. That is where your perfection lies, not in your body, for all bodies are imperfect to some extent. Bodies belong to the divided universe of divided balance. Your body, however, belongs to the divided universe of divided balance between two opposite forces. Each of these divided balances manifest God equally. Each are perfect exemplifications of the law. If you put decaying or poisonous food into your growing body and then ask God in full faith and belief to set his law aside for you, you are but expressing ignorance of God's way of working with you instead of knowledge of your co-creatorship with God. You do not realize that you are asking God to reverse his law and make the destructive force which you have put into your body become the destructive force. When God divided the undivided, he made both divisions perfect. When you use both of them in balance, you produce a perfect body, but when you, or all nature, unbalance the two, you are violating God's law, and you must blame yourself only for it. Do not blame God or ask him to void your mistake. You yourself must void it by restoring balance. Two children on a seesaw play with the two opposite forces of the divided universe with great happiness until one or both of them break that equality. Blood then flows from shins by the children's own decision to manifest unbalance. Perfection is everywhere. There is no imperfection. When we see what we call imperfect bodies or imperfection anywhere, whether it be in crippled children, malformed trees, or diseased man, or life-taking hurricanes, droughts, smallpox epidemics, or any other effects of motion whatsoever which expresses a very unbalanced condition, we must see them as perfect workings of a perfect law. If they are not to our liking, we must do something about it. The only thing we can do is to work with God intelligently through action, just as God works with nature through intelligent action. A smallpox epidemic cannot be stopped by all the prayers of the world so long as man continues to build smallpox into his own body through ignorance of the law which he is breaking. Instead of praying to God to stop the epidemic, man should pray for knowledge of how to work with God in the building of a balanced body. If knowledge of the cause of smallpox is given you, and you find the mosquitoes are carrying those destructive germs to you, and you then insulate yourself from the cause, the epidemic will disappear, as many epidemics have disappeared through knowledge and obedience to God's laws. Victims by thousands died of smallpox when prayer alone was practiced, but death ceased when knowledge destroyed its cause. Knowledge made the bubonic plague to be a thing of the past, while ignorance of its cause would still cause countless death, no matter how many people fervently prayed to God to stop it by affirming that God made man perfect. Knowledge of cause saved millions of lives, while millions died because of ignorance. Likewise, hosts of reverent people pray to God to stop wars, while they still continue the practice which make wars. Love alone will not stop wars by unifying mankind. Just so long as disunity causes men and nations to fear each other, there will be wars. Grave inconsistencies of non-thinking people. Many who believe in healing by prayer alone without working with God through intelligent action vehemently condemn calling in a doctor or surgeon in case where purely mechanical action is needed to save a life, such as in a childbirth where both child and mother die because of the lack of purely mechanical change of position of the borning child which otherwise could not be born. Refusal to make use of the knowledge of one to whom God has given such knowledge is as much a commission of murder by the one who refuses as though he killed the mother and child with a revolver. I know of such a person who rejects the help of all doctors and surgeons and bitterly condemns all operations. I asked of him this question: do you condemn the idea of blood transfusion when a person is dying from loss of blood? Yes, I do, he replied, because it requires a surgical operation which would not be necessary if one had proper faith in God. If you were dying of hunger, would you not eat food to make blood so that you would not die? I asked. Of course I would, but that is God's natural plan, while surgical operations are not. Surgery is a method employed by those who do not know or believe in God's almighty power, he replied. Would you recommend that 100 surgeons and doctors be withdrawn from the battlefield and replaced with men of your belief to save the lives of men whose legs have been shot off, skulls crushed, and bones exposed to view, men who are bleeding to death by terrible gunshot wounds or burns where flesh is half gone from the body? I'm asking you this question, may I remind you that knowledge of surgery has reduced the death percentage to 1/5 of the death rate of 35 years ago. Could your method give these men new legs, new arms, faces, and parts of body, which plastic surgery has made possible in giving happiness and new life to thousands who would have died in agony otherwise? His answer was so inconsistent that I will give it only in brief digest. It was to the effect that mind cure had not yet reached that stage, that the patients must also have faith, that war was sin and the wages of sin are death, and other generalities which indicated gross ignorance of God's ways of working with man and nature. Such believers do not realize that when surgeons heal with knowledge, that is mind healing. It is making use of knowledge followed by action, which is the very basis of principle of creation. God makes all things purposefully. They must fulfill their purpose. When they have fulfilled it or have rendered their bodies incapable of fulfilling it, God's law returns the body to the stillness from which it came. Those who affirm that God made man perfect, meaning the body of man, do not realize that the making of the body of man covers a period of 1,000,000 of years. The man of the jungle or the Stone Age or the Neanderthal man are as unlike as the forest of today, and those of the carnivorous ages are unlike. If God made man of today perfect, could we not also say that Neanderthal man was perfect, or that cosmic illumined man of the future is also perfect, when neither one resembles the other mentally or physically? The bodies are electrochemical machines. All vegetables and animal bodies are mechanical instruments, which are made for the sole purpose of manifesting God through action. That is all the bodies do. They do nothing else than express the actions of their centering mind, which motivates their action. Bodies are composed of electric waves. One half of every wave is concentrative and centripetal. It is thus polarized in the positive direction of increasing vitality. It is the builder of bodies. Positive polarity multiplies power in the measure of desire of mind to express action. Positive polarity expresses life. The other half of the wave is decentrative and centrifugal. It is thus polarized in the negative direction of decreasing vitality. It is the destroyer of bodies. Negative polarity divides power in the measure of desire of mind to rest from expressing action. Negative polarity expresses death. One half of every wave, likewise, is alkaline in its chemistry. The alkaline elements are positive and multiply vitality in the direction which expresses life. The other half of the wave is acid in its chemistry. The acid elements are negative and divide vitality in the direction which expresses death. For every acid element there is a balancing alkaline one. Both are necessary, but each must always balance the other, else the body is thrown out of balance and becomes ill or develops destructive growth and malignancies which are so rapidly increasing in the unnatural lives of great cities. Centering the body is the undivided consciousness which rules the body through its divided extensions of thinking mind. The wave vibrations of thinking mind are likewise divided into opposite sets of emotion. The emotions which express happiness, joy, ecstasy, love, and good will polarize the body positively in the direction which expresses life. These emotions multiply the alkaline elements to vitalize the body and to destroy any destructive tissues or malignancies in the body caused by an overbalance of acid supremacy. Poisonous toxins which are not deep-seated will thus be voided, but long-developing deep-seated growth due to unbalanced conditions and to inherited malformations and seed patterns may be retarded but are often not possible of healing without the aid of a surgeon. The emotions which express anger, fear, worry, jealousy, cynicism, and hatred polarize the body negatively in the direction which expresses death. These emotions multiply the acid elements and devitalize the body by developing toxic conditions, which if sufficiently sustained promote the various destructive growth which gradually decay the body until it is utterly destroyed. As I have so often said, we build our own bodies by the thoughts we think as well as the food we eat. God's mind is forever ecstatic. The more we reflect the ecstatic condition of God's mind, the more we vitalize our bodies, prolong our lives, and lengthen their maturing points. That is what I mean by the need for constant communion with God in order that His omnipotence shall be extended to you in the measure of your ability to recognize it in you. That is why my own lifetime habit of working knowingly with God delayed my maturing point until far in the 60s instead of the average maturity of a man in his 40s. The great effort of life is to so live, mentally and physically, that you forever maintain a perfect balance between all of these pairs of opposite conditions. While affirming to your cancer patients that God made all men perfect, are you taking into consideration all of these attributes, which are so far out of balance in every living human being that it is almost humorous to assert or affirm such an impossibility in nature? The actual fact is that there are no perfect living bodies of any kind in nature. Their very growth under so many varying conditions makes perfection for all of them impossible. The perfection lies in the law which makes bodies, not in the bodies themselves. The oak over in the open meadow seems perfect. A squirrel planted on good ground. That other oak over in the shadow seems far from perfect. A squirrel planted it on barren ground in the crevice of a rock where its roots could not spread. That man over there seems to have a fine body, even though one would not call it perfect. He has injured its shape by overeating. Next to him is a much finer body. He inherited it from a long-lived ancestor. But over to the left is a misshapen body given to him by parents who were syphilitic. In the hospital up the street are rooms full of bodies with twisted feet, hunched backs, and other deformities. Surgery is reclaiming many of those to the semblance of perfection. Could you bring happiness or cure to any of those by telling them that God made them perfect? I think not. I know a man like this, however, that would believe you and understand you when you say, God made man perfect. This man is a hopeless cripple, a paralytic who has not moved in 30 years. He is totally blind also, but can hear and talk. That is all he can do physically, yet spiritually he is a giant. He would say, yes, God made me perfect, but nature or my parents or something did not work in balance with God's law to give me a perfect body. He is one of the most joyous and spiritual men I have ever known, and has brought health and happiness to others by his inspired writings, by means of which he has made himself abundantly self-supporting. You will remember the passage of Scripture which says that the unbalanced acts of parents will be visited upon their children unto the third and fourth generation. There are millions of imperfect bodies, even badly malformed bodies, which are the inherited malformations and distorted seed pattern. Our blind paralytic is undoubtedly one of these. Disease is not alone the cause of all of these malformations of descendants. For several generations, women distorted their inner organs by tight lacing of that barbarous invention, the corset. Hundreds of thousands of women descendants of these tight lacing ancestors have suffered great and unnecessary agony in giving birth to children, or in their normal menstrual periods, because of these sins of their mothers and grandmothers, while thousands of them had to undergo major operations because of these sins. When you tell these women that God made them perfect, and all they have to do is to see themselves perfect, and remind God that He has perhaps overlooked them in letting something so hurtful happen to their bodies, you are forgetting that God did not do the tight lacing which caused these agonies. Their grandmothers did that. The value of faith and belief. It must be remembered that bodies are the product of thought of mind. Mind is perfect, so that part of the building of man which God does is perfect. When man's thinking is unbalanced, his body is also unbalanced, because his body is built in the image of his thinking. No one should ask God to remedy man's own failure to do his own part in working with God. All the faith and belief in the world will not induce God to balance man's own unbalancing, for that would take free will from man and reduce him to the status of an automaton, and this is not in the scheme of nature. Faith and belief have great emotional value in healing bodies, for like other positive spiritual emotions such as reverence, ecstasy, happiness, beauty, love, and kindred emotions, they reverse the opposite emotions of fear, hate, worry, discouragement, and other negative emotions, and thus repolarize a depolarizing body. When you have thus substituted such constructive emotions for destructive ones, it is not your faith and belief in God which is healed. It is you yourself who have healed yourself by balancing your body electrically and chemically. It is your own obedience to God's law that has healed you. Conclusion. God is love. The foundation of law is balance. God's universe is balanced by the two opposite pulsations which manifest love. When man learns to balance all his human relations and all of his human emotions, he will have a perfectly balanced body. Normal bodies are balanced. Everyone may have as balanced and as normal a body as he is able to practice the principle of balance from moment to moment of his life. If you could keep in balance all that God has already given you, you would never have any illness or body whatsoever, for it would be impossible. God's balanced laws are always fulfilled with balanced manifestation. It could not be otherwise. Conversely, unbalance between the two opposing forces will always result in unbalanced manifestations. Tumors, cancers, headaches, heart disease, and every other body ailment is the result of unequal interchange between God's two constructive, destructive forces. Likewise, all infectious diseases and all malignancies are similarly caused, for absolute balance between the two would insulate each other from the other and allow the complete cycle of appearance and disappearance to consummate themselves in an orderly and normal manner. The more you can live and work knowingly with God from moment to moment, the more your body can approach the perfection which complete balance can alone give. Letter. Treasured friends, we feel that by this time you will have discovered that there is a trend and a purpose between the lines of these lessons, other than building of knowledge upon which a scientifically provable philosophy of life can be found. You must feel that trend and purpose, for your letters indicate this fact, and those letters put recognition of our purpose into words more and more vividly, and that pleases Lau and me mightily. Perhaps, though, you might search harder for what is invisibly written between the lines if I put into words and tell you very plainly what I am aiming at psychologically. Such words would have been wasted if I stated them several months ago, but not now, for these words will have a different meaning today than they would have during the earlier lessons. We spoke in generalities at that time, telling you, for example, that it was a transition from sensing to knowing, or the unfolding of the cosmic man, in such generalities. These terms must have intuitively conveyed our meaning to you, and awakened in you the desire for cosmic knowledge, but you did not have so dynamic an understanding of what lay behind these terms as you do today. You must now understand by this time that we are trying to make you live and work knowingly in both the undivided indivisible universe and the divided physical universe of bodies in action. The transition from sensing to knowing actually means living in the light of inspired knowing all of the time, and extending your inspired knowing to your thoughts when you wish to create thought bodies to imagine your thoughts. Thus, living in the high heavens, the body is but secondary, and to be forgotten as much as possible when not needed for the manifestation of your knowing through action. This reverses the rule of both body and mind by the senses, which makes continual demands for pure gratification of senses. The senses are important, vitally important, for they are a doorway to the soul if the door to the soul is kept wide open by desire of the soul in you. But when demands of the senses close a door and never let it open, and the senses dominate you, you then but live in an objective universe of sensed bodies which insulate the soul and drown out the inner voice with which would reach the soul if it could. The most wonderful thing in all the world is within every man. The genius knows it, for he is close to it. The mystic knows it better, for he has touched the hem of it. And the cosmic thinker is reaching out eagerly for the kingdom of heaven in the light which that wonderful thing is. All mankind has known of it in his heart from the beginning and started to search for it way back into the dark eons. But many are now opening the door wider and wider, which leads to a new dwelling place. The real dwelling place of man, who has for such long ages thought that his body was his dwelling place. To live knowingly in the light where man is, where God is, where all knowledge, power, and presence are, the fulcrum for expression in the divided universe. To make the kingdom of heaven which lies beyond the doors of your senses your dwelling place. To know the ecstasy of it, the inspiration of it for your interpretation into silent rhythm, into motionless forms unborn as yet. Unborn till you want them born. That is what I mean by making the transition from sensing to knowing. I want you to live in God's universe and look out from its light into its divided extensions when you will, and thus looking out to find them wonderful and good, from reflecting the glory of the light of their sources strongly there, weakly there, but all of it being good. For all are seeking that door which you have found, and some are near enough for you to reach forth your hand and help them over the threshold. And just as that is what Lau and I are giving our lives for, both working together just towards that end, hours upon hours we review all these lessons together with just that end, that the right words will be found, the simplest of language and examples used, all of it for just that one purpose of keeping that door to the light wide open to you for your dwelling place, from where you may work knowingly with God from moment to moment, and be ever watchful for those who are reaching out to you to help them across the illumined threshold into the glory of the all-knowing light. For that purpose God led us to this sacred mountain from where the message will spread throughout the world when there are teachers enough to multiply our ability to spread it. They are coming and will continue to come until the time comes when Lau and I shall unfold our plan to you for the great transformation of man and the dawn of a new day in human relations. With our deepest love to you, I am sincerely Walter Russell. End of lesson. Lesson number 29. The spiritual significance of electric polarity. We have progressed to a point where you can now comprehend why God divided his thinking into pairs of opposite electrical mates to make two polarized units of every creating thing, whether mineral, vegetable, or animal. What was God's purpose in creating your polarized body? God's only purpose in creating his whole universe of bodies is to express his one idea of love, as manifested by him in giving and regiving by every opposite mate in nature to every other opposite mate. This fact we must thoroughly understand. If we thoroughly understand it, we can then know that the solution of all of life's problem lies in our knowledge of how to manifest that love principle. That is all that life is for. We have just begun to learn its lessons. When we do understand it, we will then know what matter in motion is and why God created matter in motion. We will then understand that love is law, the one and only law in God's universe, the one divine law. We will also realize that love is power, the only power in all the universe. With that knowledge, we can use that power and command the law to work for us, for we will then know that God's law is our law. Each man will knowingly command his own divine law to obey his omnipotent will. Each man who thus commands his law to work with him will be able to authoritatively say, I and my Father are one. You are studying the divine Iliad message to acquire this omniscience. To the extent that you do acquire it, you will have transformed yourself from one who is a victim of his own self-inflicted punishment for lack of that knowledge, to one who has found its mighty power in its acquisition. Let us therefore look deeply into this idea of God's purpose of making two opposite kinds of body of all things of his creating. Oneness, unity, balance. God is one. God created countless pairs of oppositely conditioned ones in order that they should manifest oneness through interchange of giving and regiving to void their seeming separateness. God is unity. God created countless disunited pairs of seeming separate units in order that each disunited one of each seemingly separate pair could manifest its unity with the whole by equal interchange with the whole. Pairs of seemingly separated and disunited man-units will fulfill God's idea and purpose when these countless unit pairs know each other as the one eternal being beyond even the idea conveyed by the expression of universal brotherhood of all men. When man finally knows of his unity with God as the one universal being, the one presence in all this universe, he will have progressed beyond the idea of the brotherhood of the many, for the many will have become voided in their unity as one. God is balance. God divided his idea of balance in himself by creating pairs of unbalanced conditions, each of which is the opposite of the other. He commanded each of these unbalanced pairs to seek balance through each other by interchanging their unbalanced conditions. That command is God's one inviolate law. It is God's only law. It is the law of balanced giving and regiving. It is the law of love. Your whole purpose in life is to comprehend that law. You cannot fulfill God's law unless you do comprehend it. You cannot comprehend it unless you desire to comprehend it. You cannot fulfill your desire to command the law to work with you until you manifest your desire through action. There is no other way for you to command God's law to fulfill your desire than through the action of giving. The only lesson of your life is to learn how to give. That is all. There is no other. You do not have to learn how to take, for you cannot take without breaching God's law. Nor can you receive that which you have not given, therefore have no thought of receiving. Meditate upon the following thoughts until you know them. You have always been as God has always been. God created your body around the eternal you as one of a divided pair of bodies. That which you think of as your body is but one unbalanced half of one balanced whole. Neither half is nor can be the whole. God gave you a visible body to manifest the eternal you in the visible universe. You desired to have a body to manifest yourself. Your desire was God's desire. God desired that you should have a body to manifest his self. Yourself and God's self are one. In creating your body, God created seeming separateness, seeming disunity, and seeming unbalance. God divided all bodies into pairs of oppositely unbalanced conditions. To one half of each pair, God gave one condition. To the other half, he gave the other condition. Every idea in God's universe is manifested in matter by two oppositely conditioned bodies, which perpetually interchange to simulate each idea by interchanging motion. God separated all of his divided pairs of divided bodies by equators. Equators are invisible planes of balance which divide all pairs of oppositely unbalanced conditions. One half of that which your body needs for its continuance, or for its extension, or for its reproduction, is not in your body. It is in the other half of your body. It is on the other side of the equator which divides your body into two opposite conditions. It is in the invisible half of you. Conversely, one half of that which the other half of your body needs is in your body. God gave to the other half of you what you need, and he gave to you what the other half needs. Without the other half, which is the other side of your equator, which separates you from oppositely polarized other half, you could no more continue your bodily existence than one cell of a storage battery could continue to operate without the other. All thoughts and all bodies are two. What we have said about the creation of material bodies in pairs also applies to thought bodies, for they are also created in pairs. Your mind-soul is one. Your soul is you. Your body is not you. From the mind-soul of the eternal you, your electric thinking extends as two. Your electric thinking creates thought bodies formed in the image of mind conceiving. Thought bodies are two. Concepts of your mind center the two pulsations of your electric thinking as a still fulcrum centers a moving lever. The moving lever is two, extending from one. Your eternal soul is the still fulcrum of you. Your thinking is the lever of motion which creates pulsing thought bodies, and your physical action is the lever which creates pulsing material bodies. Your power is in your soul. Your ability to express that power is dependent upon the measure of your awareness of your soul as the fulcrum of your body, or of the universal God soul as the fulcrum of God's universal body. And it is also dependent upon the measure of your awareness of the oneness of your soul with the universal soul. How can I burn these thoughts into the comprehension of your very soul? To carry them further without pausing to make them a part of your conscious knowing would but confuse you. They must be carried further, else you will never comprehend what happens to your body after death, in that interval between death and rebirth. Nor will you comprehend how you acquired a body, or why you cannot keep it. Nor will you ever dynamically know what your soul is in relation to your mind and to your body. Let us pause, therefore, and exemplify these thoughts objectively. Give heed to these new thoughts. 1. First, we must revise our concepts concerning the soul. It is commonly believed that only humans have souls. It is also commonly believed that each individual has an individual soul, which is as separate and apart from all other souls, as people are separate and apart from each other. This is not a true concept. There is but one soul, as there is but one mind. The soul is the desire quality in mind which causes mind to want to create bodies to manifest divine idea. But mind creates bodies by extending them from still center. The still center of every body is its soul. It is the light of God, its creator. Mind is creating bodies everywhere. There is no point anywhere in the universal equilibrium which underlies all motion where a body is not being created. No matter how ultra-microscopic or macroscopic that body is, every point in the universal equilibrium is a point of desire which is the seed for the extension of bodies. Within every electron, atom, sun, or galaxy is a still center from which point the desire to extend a body causes the extension of a body. That still center of every body is its soul. It is where God, the Creator, takes his seat to unfold and refold that particular body in accordance with the one law he has made by means of which he governs his divided universe of polarized electric opposites. Just as God is everywhere, so likewise is soul everywhere. Man's one soul. The soul of man is the still center of his consciousness. That is the point of knowing from which desires to create his body extends. That is the seat of his mind from which his thinking extends into two polarized directions. To better visualize this principle, refer back to figure 15 on page 171. Also refer to every diagram and paragraph which explains the divine Trinity. The soul is a desire of mind to manifest idea of mind. The soul manifests mind idea in imagined form by seemingly dividing and extending the light of mind through polarized opposites. The two electric workers of God's thinking wind these two divided lights into dense bodies surrounded by gaseous counterparts. They then unwind dense bodies for redistribution into space in order to repeat that process over and over again. Man's many souls. Man's body is not one. It is composed of countless millions, or even billions of little spheres which are insulated from each other by space surrounding each one, just as the sun of heavens are likewise insulated from each other. Each visible sphere is one half of a body. Its surrounding cubic wave field of space is the other half. Every one of these purposeful little spherical particles are centered by the still light of God. That still light is the soul of each of the millions of bodies which form the body of man. We will necessarily have to await a further expansion of this idea until later, but for the present we will briefly say that every visible body has its invisible but equal measure of electric potential in space. Space is not indefinite or infinite in measure, nor is space formless. Space is the other measured half of every body which floats in it, and that other half is not only measured, but is bounded by a wave field of definite form. God makes spherical bodies of visible dense matter surrounded by cubic bodies of invisible expanded matter. God then compresses his cube spheres into many forms consisting of many cube spheres. There are no other forms in nature than these cube spheres and sections of them. All spheroidal forms are spheres in the making and unmaking, while invisible forms in space surrounding the visible spheres which center them are cubes and cube sections. All crystal forms and the chemical elements procure their visible forms from their invisible counterparts in space. This is all we can say of this subject at this time. We will expand this idea later when we are ready for it. All bodies are two. We must revise our concepts concerning bodies. It is commonly believed by every man that his body is that organism which is contained within his skin. This is totally wrong conception and must be revised. Your actual body reaches a long way under the earth and very high into the heavens above the earth. You are seemingly separated from that other visible and invisible part of your body, but actually you are not. For what you think of as your body could not survive 5 minutes if severed from its extension from earth and space. You are separated from your extension by equators only. Half of what your visible body needs is on the other side of the equator, which divides your electro-positive visible body from its electro-negative invisible mate. Conversely, half of what your invisible body needs is within you. It is absolutely imperative that each half of your body constantly give to the other half, and it is as certain that each giving shall be regiven as that night will be followed by day. What you think of as your body is a patterned extension of the earth, to which you are inescapably rooted, and it is also an extension of space surrounding the earth, within which you are temporarily compressed. It is merely a small nucleus of a very extended dual body which is hundreds, if not thousands of times larger than your visible body. Figure 62 exemplifies the dual electric wave field which encloses every body pair. The low electric potential which surrounds every visible body is equal to that of its dense center, but unequal in volume. The outer decentrated half being thousands of times greater in volume than the concentrated inner half. All bodies are not one but two, just as the sun is a dense body surrounded by a tremendous expanse of space, which is the other half of its divided self. So is every other body in the whole universe similarly divided into dense bodies surrounded by the other half of their polarized self. These two are but one body, but it is divided into opposite conditions which each other in cycles of appearance, disappearance, and reappearance to create the illusion of change and separateness, which deceives our limited range of sensing into believing that the whole body is but the dense part which is confined within its surface boundaries. The surface of a man's body is an equator which divides the two interdependent halves from each other. Figure 63. It is the nature of gravitation to seek the high potential center of positively charging bodies. We call such points centers of gravity. Figure 64. It is the nature of radiation to seek the low potential areas in space surrounding negatively discharging bodies. 65. All bodies are simultaneously charging and discharging. Every body of matter is a continually working expansion-compression pump which is forever creating and dissolving solids. Figure 67. The charging electric worker pulls centripetally inward from within. The discharging electric worker thrusts centrifugally outward from within. The charging force is preponderant for one half of each cycle. It then gives away to preponderance of the other electric worker. This sequential strengthening and weakening of each of the two workers constitutes the heartbeat of the universe and the in-breathing-out-breathing sequence of all bodies of matter in motion. Every particle of matter in the universe, whether electron, man, or giant sun, winds up and unwinds alternately to compress and expand as it breathes in and then breathes out. These actions and reactions of the positive and negative electric workers pump matter into incandescent spheres and out into cold space in forever repetitive sequence of appearance, disappearance, and reappearance. Every pumping body is spherical or spheroidal. Every radius of every pumping mass is a piston which pulses with the universal heartbeat to integrate and disintegrate matter. Figure 68. Nature creates bodies by polarizing an equilibrium condition. Nature destroys bodies by depolarizing them. Nature repeats bodies by voiding their polarity through interchange between their opposite conditions. All bodies are infinitely extended. Figure 63 diagrams the inbreathing of the central half from its outer mate, which generates it by pumping the low potential of the outer half into the inner half to increase the potential of the inner half. This inbreathing of inner bodies from outer bodies is what is called gravitation. Gravitation is the compressive half of the electric cycle, which pulls inward from within to manifest life. It is the charging half of the electric cycle. It charges the inner body by discharging the outer one. Figure 64 is the reverse of Figure 63. It is the outbreathing of the inner body toward the outer half, which is called radiation. Radiation is the expansive half of the electric cycle, which thrusts outward from within to manifest death. It is the discharging half of the electric cycle. It charges the outer body by discharging the inner one. Figure 65 illustrates the sequential inbreathing and outbreathing, which is continuous in every body in the universe, whether it be an electron or a giant nebula. This sequence is the heartbeat of God's body. Figure 66 illustrates the interchange between all dense and spatial bodies. The two black gravitating spiral lanes are generating light, which winds up its visible center by compressing it. It pumps inward from within radially for one half of each heartbeat. Conversely, the two light-radiating lanes are degenerative light, which unwinds its visible body by expanding into space until it becomes invisible. It pumps outward from within, radially, for the other half of each heartbeat. During one half of man's life cycle, his power to generate his inner body into stronger life is greater than the power of his outer body to degenerate it toward so-called death. During the other half, the power of his outer body increases until the inner body disappears from within the range of man's sensing. It still exists, however, for there is no death. All expressions of God's idea, as manifested in bodies, are continuous. Bodies never cease to be, even though they disappear. Even though they pass beyond the range of man's sensing, they do not pass beyond the range of his knowing. Also, that point of desire which is in the soul of idea will always repeat the dual body of that idea when the condition of environment make it possible for the two electric workers to reborn the body forms of the idea. Figure 67 graphically illustrates the pulsing heartbeat of God's body, as one half of the electric cycle creates the visible half of the body, and the other half of it creates the invisible half by each interchanging with the other simultaneously and sequentially. Figure 68 illustrates how two opposite polarized bodies repeat their patterns through each other by avoiding their dividing equators and finding balance in each other through uniting their respective wave fields into one inclusive one. Misconceptions regarding bodies. What you think of as your living body is that part of you which you can see when you look into a mirror. Your senses tell your senses that your body is alive. They tell you that your heart is beating, and that all organs of your body are functioning to make of your body a living organic thing. God has given your senses the power of perceiving only a small range of the whole circle of effect. That small range would not extend over 20 degrees of the whole 360, which would allow you to see effects that are now invisible if you had but another 10 degrees. The human race is gradually increasing its range. When we discover that increase in a few people out of the many, we call it extrasensory perception. We will talk about that later. Your present range of senses tell you, however, that your body is absolutely dependent upon the earth and its surrounding space, but you do not realize your identity with the part of your body which is outside of you. That which is your body is also the earth. Your body was extruded from earth, pushed out from it into space. Your body radiated from the earth, but earth's gravity changed you to earth. The body which earth gave to you, you must re-give to earth. Conversely, earth was compressed from space. Your body, therefore, is an extension of both earth and space. Equators separate you from both. That part of your body which is on the other side of the equator must be continually extended to you, else you cannot survive. You would die of starvation if your roots on earth did not constantly extend the nourishment of earth's soil to replenish your body. Conversely, the soil of earth would lose its ability to give life to you if you did not re-give it to it equally. You were not born from earth at some time now past. You are continually and perpetually being reborn from earth, which gives you life in exchange for your death. Earth needs your death, that you give to it, just as you need a life which it gives to you. Nor was your first breath, which your counterpart in space gave to you, that which alone gave you life. During your whole life, the other polarized half of you gave life to you in order that you may live. You, in turn, give your death to your counterpart in space in order that it may live. Conclusion. When we give anything to anybody, we are prone to think that we are that much poorer because we have less than we had. That which you had given leaves us minus just so much. Just so long as we think that way, we have not learned the great lesson of nature which enriches itself only by giving. When the heavens withhold rains from earth to give to life, the resultant desert has not to give to the heavens, so both are impoverished. But when a man gives to mankind of his self, asking not, nor having expected motive for giving, such a man is enriched by that which he is given, for the law of love, as manifested in balanced interchange, is as absolute as that light shown into a mirror will re-give equally of that which has been extended to it. End of lesson. Lesson number 30, Reincarnation. We now approach the most difficult of all subjects, the idea of reincarnation. Reincarnation is difficult to explain to people of this age because the concepts of this age in the unfolding of man are still too primitive for anyone to comprehend many facts of nature which are beyond their limited range of sensing. That extremely limited range of sensing of this early stage of man's unfolding is his great handicap to comprehend of this principle. When people say casually to me, "Do you believe in reincarnation? Please tell me about it," I shudder at the task, for it is impossible to explain reincarnation to anyone whose concept of bodies and life and death of bodies are what people of the present age think they are. Many of the previous lessons were written to build new concepts of nature's working which would make this most obvious fact of nature understandable. In these lessons we made it clear that all bodies, whether thought bodies or material bodies such as sound, animals, suns, or galaxies, are but light waves. The lesson previous to this was devoted entirely to the purpose of building new concepts, such as the duality of bodies, as a basis for a better understanding of the as yet unknown facts of reincarnation. These new concepts of the polarization of bodies into concentrated and decentrated, visible and invisible pairs, which interchange their polarity forever in repetitive cycles, are first steps in peering beyond the scene of God's workshop where the making of bodies take place. It will be necessary to describe how God builds visible bodies by transforming them from their invisible counterparts, and then reverse that process so that visible ones again become visible. Science has suspected that such a process exists, but has not yet become able to solve it. Science merely says matter seemingly emerges from space and is then swallowed up by space. But it may be that man will never be able to solve this great mystery of the creative process of matter. We will slowly build a complete explanation of this process of nature. The illusion of disappearance and reappearance. 1. Consider this thought. Place a glass of water on your garden wall some sunny day. When you go to see it in the afternoon, that body of water is not there. You do not say that that water is dead. You say it has disappeared, and you know why it has disappeared and where it is. You know that it has been changed its polarity from its positive dense condition to its expanded negative condition. That visible body of water which occupied 6 cubic inches has evaporated into a large body of invisible vapors, which now occupy a space of 6,000 cubic inches. You know that even though that body of water has disappeared, it does not cease to exist. You know that it still has a body, not the same kind of body, not one which you could drink or wash your hands in, but still it has a body. It might even become visible as a cloud and disappear again. You never think of it as having ceased to be, for you know it will come again when cold air contracts into a dense concentrative polar condition. When rain fills the empty cup, as you say that it has repeated its condition as water. Then when it again becomes vapor, you can again say that it has repeated its condition as vapor. If you totally disregard the thought of repetition of its two opposite conditions and substitute the thought of the eternal continuity of that body of water which forever appears within the range of your vision, then disappears beyond the range for an interval before it again reappears, you will have taken the first simple step toward the comprehension of the sequential interchange of visible bodies with their invisible counterparts. That realization is what I must now impress upon you until you fully realize that each interval of time between the disappearance and reappearance of any body is not a discontinuance of the body. It is merely a blackout of your senses. When things disappear from your vision or your hearing, they have not ceased to be. They are not dead. And when they reappear within your vision or hearing, they are not reborn into life. They have but again come within your range of vision or hearing. Together with the above realization, you must mix in your consciousness that the soul of that disappeared body still is, and in that soul is the same desire that created that disappeared body. That desire of the soul to unfold the form of an idea will cause it to reappear, to again unfold forever and forever as a continuity which is forever changing and never ceases. Changing sound bodies. 2. We must exemplify this thought to make it a part of our knowing. Consider therefore a body of sound you create by talking. When the sound ceases, it is not dead. You no longer hear it, but if there is a cliffside up the valley, and you have talked loudly enough, your voice will again be heard as it condenses into small waves by impacting against the cliff. It is the same voice and the same sound continued out into its spatial counterpart. It is still living. It is a continuity of itself. It is the same sound extended from the point of desire where its body form was created. We call it an echo. It is just as appropriate to call it a mirror, for sound waves are light which reflect light. The illusion of repetition. 3. Consider the same sound again, brought into appearance 3,000 miles away by the condenser of your radio, which shortens the length and waves to a dimension created by you when you spoke them. Again we say they were not dead when they disappeared 3,000 miles away from your birth. They but disappeared from the range within your senses were able to perceive them. No matter where upon this earth you sit your condenser to restore the dimensions of those sound bodies to their original wavelength and frequency, you will hear those sounds again in their original pattern and identity. If Churchill spoke them at their point of desire, Churchill's identity was reincarnated or reborn or repeated wherever they newly appeared. It was the same voice, same pattern, same characteristic in every respect, wherever recondensed into reappearance. Continuity. If these facts are true to natural law, we are not correct when we use the terms death, rebirth, disappearance, repetition, reappearance, or reincarnation. How can we be correct in the use of such terms when we know that there is a continuity of such bodies, and that nothing is changed in them but their dimension and their polarity? Likewise, if their recognized identity and pattern was that of Churchill who spoke them, or Paderewski who played them, or Caruso who sang them, why then should we question whether or not we lose our individuality when the body which we call John Jones become recondensed into its original pattern and dimensions after having disappeared beyond the range of our vision by the natural process of expansion and its consequent change of wavelength and frequencies? All bodies are the result of desire of mind to create bodies. Desire of mind is eternal, therefore all bodies are eternal in their continuity. We shall not even say that they are eternally repetitive, for repetition is suggestive of discontinuous intervals between each repetition. When night comes, we no longer see the distant mountains. Our range of vision does not permit us to see through the dark. In the morning, the mountains reappear within our range of vision, but we do not think of it as another mountain reborn, nor do we think of it as a repetition. We think of it as a continuity, for the mountain has never ceased to be. We could not see it because the short light waves which permit us to see it in the daytime reverse their polarity. They become so long that their slow vibrations shut out all objects from our eyes which respond only to short light waves of high frequency. In other words, the light which our eyes respond to has reversed its polarity beyond our range of sensing. If we desire to know what happens to our bodies after death, and if we wish to thoroughly understand the illusion of reincarnation, we must first thoroughly understand what we mean by the term reversal of polarity, and we must also know what we mean by the term cycles. We explain polarity reversal and cycles. Postulate number 1. All bodies are continuous. They never cease. They merely reverse their polarity twice in every cycle of their eternal journey within and beyond the range of our sensing. Postulate number 2. All bodies are expressed in cycles. A cycle is a continuous two-way spiral journey from the expanded condition of the body to its opposite compressed condition and back again to its expanded condition. A most familiar example of a cycle is day and night. Each is the opposite half of the other. Postulate number 3. There are 2 points of rest in every cycle. At each of these 2 rest points, each opposite condition reverses and becomes the other. Day is the contraction of light waves into visibility. Night is a reversal of a cycle. Light waves expand and become invisible. In other words, a cycle is that journey in every wave which the crest of the wave takes to become its trough and back again to its crest. A cycle of thought is a concentrated thought body followed by its decentration into indefinite form. It is the action and reaction piston stroke of the universal pump which is the heartbeat of God's body. It is a complete inbreathing, outbreathing of every body in the universe which eternally breathes in cycle of changing wave dimensions. It is these breathing cycles which cause bodies to appear within our range of vision, then disappear beyond that range. It is the point of conception preceding the birth of a man, through his death to maturity, then back to the same point of conception through his death. We think of life as beginning at birth and ending in death. We have not yet learned to think of it as a continuity, such as the cycle of a piston stroke in an expansion-contraction engine, yet one is as continuous as the other. At middle life, our generative power reverses. We then begin to die, just as we began to live 40 years ago. At that reversal point, our visible bodies begin to manifest their invisible halves. They are still visible for another 30 or 40 years before they pass beyond our range of visibility at that point, which we call death. Likewise, they are still workable as mechanical bodies for many years after the power to pump our visible bodies into their dense forms weaken to the point where we have to give back to earth and space all that we have borrowed from it. I am often asked what happens if one is not allowed to live his life through, such as dying in childhood or killed in war, if such a one is deprived of the advantages with those who have completed their life cycles. Nature balances all of her divided cycles. If the visible body disappears at 20 years of age, it means only that the whole life cycle is shortened. The invisible half of the body shortens its rest period to balance the shortening of the work period. The youth who is killed reincarnates sooner than he otherwise would. Remember always that the time element in every cycle of every kind throughout all creation is equally divided between its opposite half. The two reversal points are equal. Action and reaction of positive and negative halves of polarized bodies are equal. Your inbreathing period is equal to your outbreathing period. If a man generates his concentrated body toward life for 10, 20, 30, or 50 years to manifest God by work, he must decentrate the other half of his body for an equal period to manifest God through rest. That is the law. The compression period of every cycle must be followed by an equal expansion period. There is no exception to this law, so that any shortening of any life cycle by destruction of one half of it is balanced in the other half. The following lessons will make this principle more clear to you as we proceed with further unfolding of the continuity of the opposite expressions of life, which we wrongly call life and death. These are not two, they are one. Amazingly new concepts. Both halves of our bodies eternally live. They never die. There is no death in the universe anywhere, nor in anything. God lives. God's universe is a living universe. Our bodies work for a while, then they relax and rest before working again. But relaxation is not death. The electric heartbeat of this living universe works for one half of its pulse beat. It releases during the other half, but each expresses the continuity of life. Our bodies work at manifesting God during the positive half of their body cycle. They then relax, decentrate into the negative half of their bodies to renew their power to again manifest God through work. Our bodies are electric records of God's thinking. God's thinking is continuous. Therefore, the recording of God's thinking is continuous. God's thinking is concentrative and decentrative. Concentration and decentration are opposite halves of the same thing. They spring from each other. They merge into each other. They interchange to become each other. They continue each other through each other. There is no interval, no void, no cessation anywhere in the continuity of God's thinking. God's concentrative thinking manifests what we call life. God's decentrative thinking manifests what we call death. Life and death are opposite halves of the same thing. They spring from each other. They merge into each other. They interchange to become each other. They continue each other through each other. And so it is with each pair of opposites in all of God's divided universe. Night is a continuation of day, and dark continues light until dark again becomes visible light. Heat extends from cold, as cold contracts to born it. Cold then extends from heat as heat expands to born it. Each continues the other as each becomes the other. There is no gap, no void, to interpret the absolute continuity of every effect of motion into its opposite effect. The cause of all effect is eternal. If there is any gap or void or discontinuity in effect, cause could not be eternal. Our present limited range of perception has borne the idea of discontinuity in us. Our concept of death is one of the results of that gap in our range of perception. Facts of nature which escape us. The soul is the fulcrum from which the polarized lever of motion extends to manifest a polarized body. All bodies are electric, therefore all bodies are polarized. A polarized body means a body which is divided into two seemingly separate parts because of two opposite conditions which cause that seeming separateness. The whole universal body is polarized. It is divided into compressed light waves of matter which you can see, and into expanded ones which you cannot see. A good example of a polarized body is a storage battery. One division is compressed, the other is expanded. They interchange to find balance in each other. Man's storage batteries can become depolarized or dead. Nature's storage batteries cannot become depolarized. They cannot die. Nature's storage batteries are bodies. Every body in nature is a permanent live storage battery. Every body consists of dense matter surrounded by the tenuous matter of space, such as the sun or a planet. God is life. In him there is no death. Bodies manifest that which their Creator is. They cannot manifest that which he is not. All bodies always manifest life. Bodies are as eternal as the ideas which they manifest are eternal. The reason that a man-made electric storage battery can become dead is because the electric current which caused the battery to pulse is withdrawn. When the charging force ceases to polarize, the battery depolarizes. God never withdraws the electric current of his motivating force from any of his creative bodies. Depolarization is impossible in God's ever-living storage batteries because the pulsing heartbeat of every body is eternally geared into the eternally living heartbeat of God's electric thinking. That still point of desire which motivates every body is eternally present in every body. It is the soul which centers every body in the universe, from a giant star to a speck of dust on a butterfly's wing. Let me recall God's word in reference to his thought as written in his message, the Divine Iliad. For behold, I am in all things, centering them, and I am without all things, controlling them. As these following lessons unfold, you will more and more comprehend the portentous meaning of these lines of his message. End of lesson. Lesson 31. The Supreme Mystery of the Ages. Reincarnation continued. To rebuild new concept of nature's working is not easy for you, nor is it easy for me to explain it simply. For you it requires great concentration, followed by much decentration. For me it needs the power to make simple for you that which seems inconceivably complex to you. I assure you, however, that when you finally arrive at full knowing of the basic simplicity of God's creative principle, you will know it in all the simplicity in which I know it, and it will transform you by its illumining as it transformed me. The simplest of all stories is the hardest to tell when one has to tell it to the senses and words. This marvelous story we are telling you cannot be told to the sense and words. It can be told only by inspired mind to re-inspired mind. It cannot be sensed, it must be known. The story is not in the line of words, therefore it is in the blank spaces between the lines. These you can read only after your senses have seen the words. Pause, therefore, often enough for your mind to read the blank spaces between the words, so that you will awaken the knowing which lies dormant within the still light of your consciousness, instead of only the vibrant motion of your senses which know nothing, but can remember and repeat everything. Let the noise of your vibrating senses die down once in a while, and seek the silence from which that noise springs. In that way you can alone know the great mystery which is being unfolded for you here in these pages, step by step, by taking one idea at a time and telling you about it as simply as you possibly can. We must talk about them simply, for from now on you will be confronted with new thoughts and ideas which are so entirely new and strange to you. It will require a great effort for you to discard your old primitive concepts, which your senses have deceived you into forming, and replace them with new ones beyond the power of your senses to distort. It is not easy to step into another world which is utterly different from that which your senses have built up for you, but the reward for the effort will simplify your life and multiply your power to control it. Proceeding in this fashion, we will tell you, step by step, how God seemingly divides his indivisible oneness into countless many seemingly separate individual ones. Also how God seemingly extends countless many changing and differently conditioned visible bodies of complex forms from the one formless, unchanging, unmeasurable, and unconditioned source of the entire illusion which creation is. God creates only one form. In the electrically divided universe, there is but one divided form of one divided body, and that one simple form is the cube sphere. The sphere is the visible, compressed half of the one polarized body. The cube is the invisible other expanded half. This one body form is in the making and unmaking everywhere in the universe. When the visible sphere is completed in its making into a true sphere, its invisible other half is then a true cube. Together the cube sphere is the basic one form of all bodies. Your own body is composed entirely of cube spheres, and so is the body of the violet, insect, elephant, automobile, or ocean liner. The complexity of nature's countless thousands of forms disappear in the simplicity of the cube sphere, of which all forms of animal, vegetable, and mineral life are composed. It may be difficult for you to think of your body in terms of cube spheres, when you are so accustomed to thinking of your body as you see it in the mirror. In it you see a body with legs, arms, head, hands, and feet. It is even difficult for you to think of your body as composed of atoms. If, however, you earnestly desire to know what happens to the pattern of your body structure, and of the countless thoughts which you have conceived during the only kind of life you know, and expressed in the only kind of body you have, you will give much thought to the cube sphere wave field, which is the basic form of God's creation. All other forms are combinations of cube spheres, or they cross-sections of them, such as you see in crystal forms of the elements which are on their way to becoming true cubes. See Figure 69. Never forget that all bodies, human and otherwise, are composed of the elements of matter. In this knowledge of the interrelationship of the cube spheres lies the answer to the thought transmission between living people and those whose bodies have passed beyond our range of sensing. This much hoped-for possibility will come within the range of your comprehension, and possibly within your powers of practice, when you know that thought bodies are the basis of the material bodies with which you are familiar. The sphere is the result of the concentrative pulsation of God's thinking, which pulls inward from within to focus the light of God's thinking to a point of stillness, around which a thought body can be formed. This causes that universal effect, which we know as gravitation, and the still point of concentration is a center of gravity. Gravitation multiplies power. The cube is the result of the decentrative pulsation of God's thinking, which thrusts outward from within to the stillness of the cube boundaries to produce the opposite effect which we know as radiation. Radiation divides power. Gravitation and radiation are the opposite ends of the piston which motivates the heartbeat of this eternally living dual body of God, which is our dual body. Its continual giving and regiving manifests the love principle in both the action and reaction, not just in one of them. Their continual interchange in spiral lanes of opposed directions give us the incandescent light of hot spheres by the friction of resistance to the interpassing of both in such close quarters as the vortical centers of cube spheres. Conversely, the release of that resistance in the widening lanes of the outer spiral direction gives us the cold and dark of the cube half of the wave fields which encloses every divided body in the universe. To exemplify this effect, see the oppositely directional arrows marked A and B in Figure 67 on page 492. No matter where you look out into nature, whether it be the bark, wood, or leaf of a tree, or speck of dust on a butterfly's wing, the grass in the meadow or the deer eating the grass, or your own body or many forms and substances, from the hair on your head to the nails on the ends of your fingers and toes, all of them are composed of cube spheres which are either completed or on their way to, or from the balance point of their maturity at the amplitude reversal point of their octave waves. Of these octave waves you will hear much in later lessons. In other words, the dual body of the cube sphere is growing to its maturity to express life, just as your body is growing to its maturity to express life, as all bodies in all the universe are doing. After they have matured to the maximum of their generative power at their octave wave amplitude, they begin to return to their spatial body from which they emerged, as your body likewise does. Remember, however, that earth and space express death to give life to the compressed half of your body. You then give life back to the expanded half of your body by giving it your death. But why think of them as life and death? Why not think of them as the two expressions of life which are manifest in all things, action and rest from action? Learn to think of life and death that way, as an interchanging continuity, instead of as the beginning and end. Think that way concerning all bodies, and all actions of all bodies which perpetually give and are being regiven. Think of the manifestations of the love principle in all actions of the body. If you even throw a ball in the air to manifest life by charging space, you are also manifesting death by discharging Earth of exactly the measure of potential with Earth extended from it. Conversely, the ball re-gives life to Earth and death to space by the interchange of one body condition with the other. You do exactly the same thing when the inner half of your body breathes out to the outer half. You give life to the outer half of your body by extending death from the inner half. Realize always that all bodies and all creation are the electric recordings of God's concentrative, decentrative thinking. Both pulsation of God's thinking are creative, not just one pulsation. Both are constructive. Both express life, life interchanging with life. There is no death nor destruction in either pulsation of God's continuous thinking. Diverging rays which leave the sun discharge the sun, but when those same rays converge towards Earth, they charge Earth with life. Negative discharge from any body becomes positive charge to every other body. Life flows continually. There is no death. We look out into the cube sphere of space. We can better visualize the cube sphere by looking up into the starry heavens. On a clear night you will see countless stars which are all true spheres, or oblate ones which are not yet completed, or which have been completed and are now transformed into their opposite spatial counterparts. Around each star you will see tremendous expanses of dark space. You think of that empty space as formless. You cannot possibly see a cubic form surrounding every perfectly spherical star. Your senses will not permit you to see them, but your mind will permit you to know many things which your senses cannot possibly perceive. See Figure 70. We make a supreme discovery. It might help you to comprehend what is now coming by asking you if you have ever considered why it is that all those millions of stars out in space do not crash into each other and wreck each other accidentally or otherwise. The answer to that question is that all wave fields, which bound and enclose each body pair in the universe, human and otherwise, are insulated from each other by invisible planes of zero curvature, such as the 6 flat planes which enclose a cube, beyond which light cannot pass without reversing its polarity. See Figure 71. Reversal of polarity is the insulator which keeps all wave fields in the universe in balance with each other, and ensures their centering suns from colliding with other suns, and adjusts the changing orbits of all centering bodies to balance always with each other's continually changing orbits. Let us now consider your own dual body in this same light. Your own body is composed of countless billions of little wave fields which bound each corpuscle of dense matter and its surrounding spatial counterpart. What is there to prevent these spheres and spheroids of your body from colliding with each other? The answer is same for your microscopic wave field as it is for the mightiest stars in the heaven. You as an individual unit of creation, like every star in the firmament as an individual unit of creation, center your own collective field, which includes the millions of little ones within you, and those you take on as your desire increases in intensity. You, as an individual unit of creation, are a point of desire in the zero universe of mind. Around that centering point, which is your soul, you create a record of your desire, which is your dual body, in a wave field measured out for you in the stillness of the unchanging zero universe. The measure of your wave field in the measure of the intensity of your desire, the pattern of the body you create in it, is an electric record of your desires. Your body is the record of the sum total of the desires you have expressed in the millions of years of your unfolding. You never lose that patterned record of your desire, which is your body. You always have your body. Your senses lose awareness of it for a while, just as they do when you sleep, but your conscious soul never loses awareness of it. Desire in your consciousness recalls it, reassembles it part by part in a pattern of age-long desire, just as desire of soul, which centers the seed of an oak, reassembles the oak tree in its own pattern, leaf by leaf, its wood, its bark, its strength, its majesty of form. If you look into the seed of the oak, you cannot find the oak, or any part of it. Even with the finest microscope, you cannot see any indication of leaf or wood of the tree, which will assemble itself around or extend from that seed. Nothing material is in the seed. It belongs to the zero universe of mind desire. Centering, it is the point of desire of mind to manifest the idea of the oak. Around that centering soul are invisible states of motion known to chemists as inert gases. That is all. These invisible inert gases are in gyroscopic motion upon planes which are at a 90-degree angle from the planes of rotation of such visible elements as carbon or silicon. No, the body of the oak is not in its seed, but the idea of the oak is there. God is there, God the Creator. We who desire to manifest that part of the whole idea of creation at that point of desire which centers the seed of the oak. Where then is the body of the oak? It is in that other half of its wave field, the invisible half within which the visible half rests from its concentrative action. When desire of mind reconcentrate upon its desire for a concentrated form of body, that concentrated form reappears by reversing its polarity from negative to positive. It centers the cube of its wave field. It becomes the fulcrum of the wave lever, which pumps each pattern part of the oak from its outer invisible body to its inner visible one. Conversely, when desire of mind decentrates, every state of motion which constituted the visible body expands centrifugally into the invisibility of its cube by again reversing its polarity from positive to negative. Always remember that you have two opposed halves of your one body, just as you have two opposed swings to the pendulum of your thinking. One half of your body is for its work period, with short intervals for rest and body renewal, while the other half is for its long rest period for complete renewal of the working half. Remember also that desire to reassemble your visible body by reversing your own body polarity is centered in you, as it is in the oak and all other forms of idea. When these processes of God's creative secrets are yours to know, you will more fully understand his meaning of the words written in the message of the divine Iliad, which read, "For behold, I am within all things, centering them, and I am without all things, controlling them." End of lesson. Lesson number 32. Answers to students' questions. At long last we are now enabled to answer the heretofore unanswerable questions concerning life, death, and what happens after, body as to body and person. Many such questions have been in our files for a long time, not because they could not be answered, but because the answers could not be understood. New concepts had to be built to replace primate ones. The reality and certainty of death was not only the dread terror, but the unnatural thought that death is God's will, and our resignation to the accepted fact that God giveth and he taketh away places the status of human unfolding at a very low level of the long upward journey to man's mountaintop. In God's commands to me, as written in the Book of Instructions, not yet published, he said, "Take thou man's death away from him, and give him back to me as me," from the divine Iliad. That does not mean that a principle which we call death is to be removed from natural law, nor does it mean that death can be conquered in the sense that man can increase his lifespan indefinitely. To take death away from man means the greater knowledge will bring him the realization that there is no death. And so it is that the preparation given in the previous lessons will now enable us to answer questions upon the subject which would not have otherwise been understood. We open our long closed files now and answer some of them. Question: If reincarnation is a process of nature, and I come back many times, why do I not remember who I was at other times and in other bodies? Answer: You remember all the essentials of all lives you have ever lived, but you do not remember the non-essentials. You remember, for example, how you built your body during the millions of years of desire expressed by you to have a body. As you rebuild your new body, you assemble it into a stage of completion it was when you last used it. During that period of your assembling, you pass through all of its former stages of your unfolding from your beginning as a spore, or a bit of protoplasm, up through the various epochal stages until you have arrived at what your body now is. It took millions of years of desire to do what you do now in 9 months. It may have taken 100,000 years of desire for fingernails to produce what you now produce in your gestation period. You remember everything that you have ever added to your body and the purposefulness of every part of it. Every cell of your body remembers its own particular purpose. White corpuscles will rush to the repair damage in your body with the same certainty that a bell will ring when you press a button. Why is this? It is because you remember each little addition to your body as you built it. Your soul remembers the desire, and your body remembers its fulfillment. You may wonder how your body remembers its fulfillment. God's recording system does that for your body, and each cell of your body unfolds from its seed a record of that unfoldment and refolds back into its seed. In later lessons, this principle will be disclosed. So much for the body. Regarding memories of physical or spiritual experience, consider the things you do now which you would not do 100,000 years ago. At such early periods, you would kill instinctively at an early age, just as a young lion would kill. It is then your nature to kill without compunction. Gradually you find it not good to kill. Your very nature changes. At each birth you remember that you are not killing. You are no longer that kind of creature. More and more your nature changes at each rebirth, for the experiences of killing and cruelty cease to be recorded in the refolding soul seed of you. There are other memories of past experiences, such as the following. 1. When a newborn babe's cheek touches its mother's breast, it immediately seeks the place upon where it suckles. You will note that a child immediately recognizes the difference between the flesh of the breast and the nipple, as all animals do. Memory is the answer to that, cell memory of body experience repeated so many millions of times that such actions become automatic. 2. If you put your finger in a child's hand, the child will hang so tightly to them that you can almost pull it up. Automatic reflexes and cell memory of many experiences explain that. There are countless other such evidence of memories of past lives which have to do with the nature of unfolding man. Why is it that you wonder why you cannot remember the name and addresses which identified you in other lives? It is as though the violet could not remember its name, or what meadow it bloomed in 10 years ago. Question. It has often been suggested that a mother who dearly loved her son could come right back and be born as his own child. Is that possible? Answer. No, it is not possible to come right back. Every cycle must be completed. The mother's cycle is not completed by the passing of her visible body. She must complete her cycle in her invisible body. If the visible half consumed 50 years, it would take an equal period of time before a reversal of polarity could again bring the inner body into reappearance. In the next series of lecture, this will be more explicitly explained by that as yet unknown phenomenon of nature, which compels every polarized body to turn inside out and outside and forever. We will defer the rest of this answer until then. Question. Do you know of any cases where loved ones of a family have reincarnated in the same family? Answer. I know of many which are possible or even probable. We are particularly interested in the evidence which runs within the possibilities, although no cases can ever be proven no matter what the evidence. Here is one very possible case. Uncle Hubert died in his youth, had red hair, was left-handed, had Roman nose and a protruding back head and distinct cowlick on his unusually high forehead. He was passionately fond of music, knew all the best classical music, and improvised by the hour. Many years later, a red-haired, left-handed child was born to his niece, who so closely resembled Uncle Hubert that the older relatives who knew him well were astonished by the great similarity. Such physical features are explainable, however, in families, but not the mental ones. This child gave evidence of great musical talent at 3. He knew all the operas and astonished his parents and friends by marking time with a baton from start to finish, as an expert orchestra leader would do. Genius is not passed down in families. Children inherit bodies, but not soul or mind. It is very rare that the children of a genius become aware of genius in them. In fact, I know many sons and daughters of great men who have felt the frustration of inferiority complexes because of not being able to measure up with their father's mental standard. Question. Will we ever be able to actually communicate with those who have passed on? Answer. You have raised a rather large question which is not capable of an adequate answer until more of our primitive concepts have been replaced with new ones which are in accord with natural law. Much can be said, however, which is within present-day comprehension. The application of just ordinary common sense to the thought, which I shall now give you, will help you to see that the very framing of your question has in it a lack of common sense. Consider these thoughts. Forget for a moment the idea of communicating with those who have passed on, and ask yourself how you communicate with those who have not passed on. You can communicate with another person in only 2 ways. 1, through your senses, which requires an action which extends your body to another body, by means of spoken or written words, letters, or other physical means of communication. 2, through your mind, which requires thought transference without the physical action of transforming thought bodies to material bodies. Telepathy, intuition, and such qualities of the mind are now rapidly unfolding to extend sensory perception to advanced humans. Now ask yourself this question. Since you have only 2 ways of communicating with other humans, would it even occur to you to use the spoken or written word method if you wish to communicate with your father while he is asleep? No, of course you would not. You know that there is not a sufficient voltage of electric current in him to vibrate his senses that way unless you awaken his body. If you did awaken his body, you could then extend your body to his, because both would be in the same electrical condition. If your father had passed on, you know you could not awaken him. He is not only in a longer sleep, but his polarity has been reversed. You cannot possibly intercommunicate with him by any extension of your electric body to his, for he could not hear sounds nor read words. His mind is not asleep, however, nor is yours. His mind still desires and always will. The desire of his soul to manifest his God self through a body will eventually bring his body back to manifest his self. Now consider this thought. Man desires, and mind thinks the thoughts which stem from desire. If you should sit with your father while he is asleep, and extend some desire of your consciousness to his consciousness, he would become aware of your thought extension to a more or less extent, depending upon the advancement of his own unfolding. This fact is so well recognized that it has a name: thought transference. You can easily demonstrate that yourself. Sit in a room of a sleeping person whom you are close to, such as your wife. If you are exuberantly happy, thinking beauty and rhythmic music and such harmonious thoughts, you can make her sleep happily and insulate her from inharmonious dreams, and she will awaken that way. It cannot be otherwise, for this is a thought wave universe, and her consciousness will respond to the rhythm and essence of your thought, which is happiness and balance, even if she did not awaken with the patterned idea which you may have given to the thought. Conversely, if you have a deep worry and fear or disturbing thoughts which are frustrations of your desire, or if something is menacing you, you will soon see your wife turn in her sleep. If she is closely in rapport with you, then, when she awakens, she will give full evidence of having consciously reflected the essence of your worried attitude of mind. More than likely, she will say, with much concern, "What is the matter, John? What is wrong?" This brings you to another thought for consideration. If you would not speak to your living father or wife who are sleeping, because you know they could not answer you while in so depolarized a body condition, why should you expect to speak in words to your father who is not only in long sleep, but who has so reversed his polarity that his invisible body could not hear you, but also could not speak to you? Ordinary common sense and the knowledge you already have will point out the absurdity of spiritualistic claims that someone's mother is in the room and wishes to speak to her daughter through the medium who makes these absurd claims. Omit, therefore, all means of bodily or person-to-person intercommunication by means of the senses, and confine such possibilities to mind and thought-of-mind intercommunications. Omit also all thought-of-mind intercommunication from which you may hope to answer, for which to have to do with things which concern only the senses. By this I mean such absurdities as asking one's mother if she is happy or comfortable where she is, or where she hid her jewel box. Remember always that this is a thought wave universe, that thought bodies are living bodies, and that thought bodies are not bound to time. Thought bodies are eternal in time. Once formed, they extend to the farthest reaches of time. Beethoven's thoughts are your thoughts, and they are posterity's. They extend through you. Beethoven is a part of your identity, your individuality, your culture, your charm. Countless thousands of thoughts of people who have passed on have been extended to future generations through you. It is not necessary for me to think of some particular thought of Beethoven's, or of any other person who has extended his thought to me, for I can just think of their soul, which is Beethoven, or Da Vinci, or Walt Whitman, and their very knowing extends to me. Even though they may have been reincarnated since they lived, their knowing and their thought bodies of their knowing extend to me at will. I can say much more to you on this subject when we have further prepared you for the comprehending of it, but this I will say now, that mankind as a whole has but hardly arrived at the verge of this new day of a greater cosmic awareness. Great transformation lie ahead for many who have passed beyond the verge. Mankind, 3,000 years from now, will have mind qualities undreamed of by this primate age, and many there are right now who are ready to step into high places undreamed of by man of 100 years ago. Question: does cremation have any disastrous effect upon reincarnation? Answer: not the slightest. The body which is discarded does not return. It is replaced, just as your body has always been replaced from day to day. You have not one particle of the same body you were born with. You are constantly discarding it and replacing it with similar states of motion. If you were not constantly discarding your body, it might weigh 100 tons in a lifetime. Cremation of your whole body would have no more effect upon future bodies assembled by desire for you than the burning of an amputated arm would have. Reincarnation does not mean the rebirth of the same body. It means the assembling of the same states of motion which constitute the pattern of that body. Letter. Beloved friends and students, your precious letters let us know of your more abundant lives through the knowledge you are gaining by your studies, are to us the greatest demonstrations we receive of God's wondrous love, giving for re-giving. When such letters arrive, and they arrive every day, they never fail to inspire us in our giving to you by making God's message ever more clear so that you may in turn know inner security. When man knows inner security, he has the key to peace and happiness, whatever material conditions are manifesting in home or world conditions. In these 4 lessons, the question that has haunted mankind since its beginning has started being revealed to you and will be continued until this great mystery has been clarified for you. Take each sentence slowly, for by so doing you will understand, and then it will become so simple for you to comprehend, you will wonder why it ever puzzled you at all. Take each thought into your meditation until it becomes a part of your thinking. Do not try to explain it to anyone unless until you know yourself, for when you are questioned about something you yourself are not clear about, you become confused and are apt to feel that you will never understand this new knowledge. In our next unit of lessons, we shall continue to unfold the heretofore unknown secrets of the soul and seeds of body forms which come into visibility and out of it into such mysterious ways. These unknown secrets have heretofore been unknown because they belong to the invisible universe which has not yet been penetrated by man. So much of what it is has come to be unknown that it must be given a little at a time and much time spent in meditation between reading to assimilate it. The matter of meditation cannot be emphasized often enough, for meditation has been so misunderstood in the past as meaning to concentrate instead of decentrate. You will remember that it was Dr. Russell who first gave the world the word decentration, thus bringing a new understanding of how to meditate. One day his new word decentration will become universally known and included in the dictionaries of the world. In order to make it perfectly clear to you that your share in the creation of this universal body is under your absolute control, when you know yourself as co-creator with God, and that the pattern form of the idea which you are manifesting is as eternal as the idea of you is eternal, you must know God's way of working. Our Father, Mother, Creator has not withheld His secrets from you. They have always been wide open for us to see and to know. If we at long last desire to open wide the doors to the light of our inner vision, we can at long last replace the weakness of our ignorance with the omnipotent power of new knowledge which these secrets will reveal. My husband has much to tell and many mysteries to disclose. These are the unsuspected mirrors and lenses of nature which reflect, repolarize, dissolve, and again resolve, forming bodies. This is a supreme mystery of curvature in our visible radial universe, which emerges from a zero universe of zero curvature. There is a mystery of simultaneously unfolding from the seed and refolding into the seed, and the mystery of the seed itself. Likewise, there is a secret of God's bookkeeping and recording system of electric waves which have 9 pages in every wave for His recording, by means of which not one thought of yours or mine is missed or forgotten. Likewise, there is the yet unknown periodicity of magnetic poles in their slow journey toward and away from polar rotation. This periodicity of magnetic poles control the making and unmaking of cube spheres, and gives you the secret of your own vitality and self-healing. Also there is the gyroscopic principle, the voidance principle, and the secret of crystal forms. All of these have a part in the knowledge of what happens to me when I die. So the next several lessons will be devoted to a continuation of this long-hidden secret of reincarnation and the continuity of life. Again, I would say to you, beloved friends and students who are surely God's New Age messengers, devote every moment possible to making this new knowledge your own, for man has reached the stage in his unfolding when he will be compelled to make the transition from his past ages of sensing and repeating and go further into the glorious cosmic age of knowing and creating. Your place in this new age will unfold as you become ready. My husband was instructed by God as to when we should release this new knowledge, and God brought me to him to fulfill my destiny by helping him find ways and words to bring the great knowledge he was born with, to give in simple words for your understanding. Every moment of our lives is given to our work, and your joy is our joy, for without this work our lives would lose their purpose for being. And so, for the depth of my being, I say thank you, and God bless you for sharing in God's great message for this coming age. Always, beloved friends, devotedly yours, Lau Russell. End of lesson.